Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where every day we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of technology and also unravel the complexities and bring you insights from the front lines of innovation. Yeah, I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today we're going to dive into a topic that's sparking debates across the tech community, and that is the paradox of AI in product development. Because joining me today is Benn Stancil, Field CTO at ThoughtSpot, a company at the vanguard of AI-powered analytics. And Ben's going to be bringing with him today a wealth of experience and a unique perspective on why, in the rush to AI enable everything, we might actually be taking a step backwards with our products. So we're going to explore the critical balance between innovation and utility, and also how ThoughtSpot is navigating these waters to ensure AI genuinely enhances user experiences without falling into the dreaded hype trap. Quite a balance, isn't it? But before we get today's guest on, I need to pay the bills. We've got a huge podcast hosting fee to pay for when we're releasing 30 episodes a month. And this month, I've partnered with a company called Kiteworks. Now, legacy MFT tools are dated and lack the security that today's remote workforce demands. So companies that continue relying on outdated technology, though, they put their sensitive data at risk. And in a world where digital threats evolve daily, the need for a secure, modern solution has never been more pressing. Well, enter Kiteworks, the beacon of security and efficiency in managed file transfer. And Kiteworks isn't just any MFT solution. With its FedRAMP moderate authorization awarded by the Department of Defense since 2017, Kiteworks sets a new standard for security. And this certification is not just a badge, it's a promise of unparalleled protection for your data, offering a fast track to CMMC compliance and eliminating some of those cumbersome, costly DIY authorization processes that plague so many of the alternatives out there. So please, step into the future of managed file transfer with Kiteworks. You can find out more information at kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get you started today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New York, where Benn is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Benn Stancil. I am the field CTO of ThoughtSpot. Prior to that, I was one of the founders of Mode. Both Mode and ThoughtSpot are BI tools. Mode was a BI tool that primarily served data teams and technical teams. And then 6 months ago, in July of 2023, Mode joined ThoughtSpot through an acquisition. And so now Mode and ThoughtSpot, both the teams and the products are coming together as kind of combined BI tool. So at Mode, I was, like I said, one of the founders and focused a lot on basically product and marketing there for the roughly 10 years that we were an independent company.
And for people that are hearing about ThoughtSpot for the very first time, my understanding is a tech company that produces business intelligence, analytics, search software. But what would your elevator pitch be for ThoughtSpot for anyone listening that's just hearing about you guys for the first time?
Yeah, so it is in a lot of ways a classic BI tool in the sense you want to be able to build dashboards and reports and all the sorts of key analytics that you need to run your business. But the real innovation that ThoughtSpot's been developing for quite some time is this kind of natural language search-based interface that obviously has also really expanded with the Gen AI developments over the last few years. But ThoughtSpot was kind of pioneering a lot of that before the hype cycle of ChatGPT and all of that. So essentially, the idea is that lots of folks around businesses have questions. Typically, those questions need to get answered through data teams or through BI teams or go to folks they ask them a question, they go pull a report for them, send them an Excel file, things like that. Over the years, we've developed a lot of solutions for people to be able to self-serve that stuff themselves through like drag and drop interfaces or sort of build your own report, WYSIWYG type things and the sorts of things that make it easier to answer those questions without code. And ThoughtSpot's kind of real innovation on top of that was instead of having a UI where you drag and drop fields into different areas to build a chart, what if you could just ask natural language questions? And so that's been something that we've all been working on for quite some time. Again, obviously expanded a lot with some of the new developments in Gen AI. But the core philosophy there is the same of, and can you just ask questions, the kinds of business questions you would be typically asking a data team of, how many orders did we have in California of this particular product, or Can I drill into those orders and look at my store? Those kinds of conversational questions that you would have to be able to help understand your business. If you could just ask them of the product directly and be able to infer what you mean and go and fetch that data and help you build the charts and reports you want that way. That's kind of the core power of what ThoughtSpot provides in this space.
And over the years, I've had a couple of people from ThoughtSpot on the podcast. Samit, I think he was the Chief Development Officer, and Cindy House. And are they still there as well?
Yes, both of them are. Both of them are still very key parts of what we're building.
Fantastic. Well, for the conversation today, of course, all anyone's talking about out there is AI. It started last year. It's continuing into 2024. But what put you on my radar was talking about the AI paradox in product development, because I read that you mentioned that AI could potentially make products worse. So can you elaborate on this paradox where the ease of building AI-backed products might not always equate to quality or improve user experience? Because I think this is a tale that we don't get to hear enough.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple of ways I think that AI could at least for some time make things sort of messy. So one is, obviously there's a big hype cycle around it now. There were AI commercials in the Super Bowl yesterday. And so, everybody's sort of focused on that. There's lots and lots of numbers and things you could look at about how companies that mention AI in their earnings calls and things like that or their stocks are doing better and startups are raising money on crazy valuations when they put AI in their pitch and all those kinds of things. And so lots of people are essentially trying to market themselves as AI businesses. And lots of products that are already existing are wanting to be able to show that they're thinking about AI and thinking about how they're going to bring AI into their products and those kinds of things. And so I think what's happening is a lot of folks are essentially trying to tack things on that if you have a piece of software or you have something that you're running and you want to be able to bring AI to it, it's relatively straightforward to kind of tack on chatbots and those kinds of things. You have a lot of these little chatbot to control the user interface, or suppose you want to sort of like chat with our support docs and you can ask it a question and it'll go and kind of fetch information from their support docs and those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of places where people are trying to glue AI onto products, not necessarily because they're solving a direct problem with it, but more to be able to say, hey, like, look at us, we have some AI feature and that kind of thing. And so I think there's going to be places where those additions aren't really necessary, or they aren't, sort of thought through as how are we actually going to help the end user. They're more there to be able to have, a big AI banner somewhere to be able to say, hey, we're thinking about this stuff, we're thinking about the future, all that kind of thing. And so there will be places where I think we just get features that don't really work that well, that we don't really need, that people are going to build things that sort of fit into the ChatGPT paradigm, because that's the way that a lot of people have been exposed to generative AI initially. And so it's going to be some things of those will probably work really well, and some of them won't, just because I think people are rushing out the features more for the feature's sake than really understanding whether or not it's a thing that their customers want, if it solves a problem, that kind of stuff. So I think over time that'll get sorted out. Some of those things will eventually go away. We'll move on to some other hype cycle, and not everybody will be chasing AI, and we'll be chasing the next thing. We'll be chasing, Vision Pro apps or whatever. And so then there'll be a little bit of a cool down phase where the people who really building the lasting AI features will build something great, and some of the other ones may end up kind of fading away if they were just these kind of tacked on things that were chasing the hype cycle.
And as an ex-IT guy, one of the things that I've always loved about ThoughtSpot is this no BS around shiny new technologies and hype cycles, etc. It's always been about a strong emphasis that begins with real customer problems rather than technology first. And it's so refreshing to hear that. So if we take that school of thought into the world of AI, how do you integrate this customer-focused approach in your AI-powered analytics solutions? And why do you think it's so crucial in avoiding the pitfalls of AI in product development very, very early on?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Again, it's easy to chase. These are the things that we want to build because, AI features and stuff, because they're hyped and because they will get attention and you can make, splashy launches with them. There was a thing that came out I saw a couple of days ago about Amazon built blockchain features and they launched like a hosted blockchain feature. And all the people inside of Amazon were like, we don't actually think there's any value in this, but people are buying it. And so I guess we'll sell it just because it's a thing that we can sell on the hype. And so I think it's easy to do that sort of stuff. And our focus is mostly on, given that ThoughtSpot, well before me or the Mode folks joined, has been about how do we bring this kind of what wasn't called this then, like the generative AI type of experience where you can ask these natural language questions. It can kind of infer what you mean. You treat it very much in the way that you treat a lot of these generative AI technologies, but it was before that. That was the way we all talked about it. ThoughtSpot was primarily thinking about like, okay, what's the great experience? What's the way that customers actually want to use it? Let's not try to sell that technology. Let's try to sell like a better experience for what people want. Is it a conversational interface? Is it something where it's more automatic alerts? Is it telling you things you should be looking at when you need to look at them? There's a lot of places where AI can help you sort of better understand your business and those sorts of things. But it's not just going to be like chat with your data exclusively. There's going to be other ways where that's integrated. And so I think a lot of it is starting with, the customer problem, starting with what things people want to do, starting with like, what's the ideal experience that people have sort of in a technology agnostic way, and then figuring out if the technology can actually solve that problem for you rather than saying, hey, we have this fancy new, OpenAI APIs. Let's figure out a way to plug it in. It's starting very much with understanding customers, understanding what they're struggling with, the places where they really, need this technology to help them, places where they don't. So a lot of it is the cliche answer in these sorts of things is just like, you got to talk to a lot of customers. You got to pay attention to what they're saying. You got to really listen to them and sit next to them. And that's sort of the solution for all of this. And I don't think any technology really changes that sort of fundamental strategy and building stuff that's, quote unquote, customer focused.
And you're also a huge advocate for thinking outside the box, which I think is a great line. But can you explain that concept and how that mindset guides ThoughtSpot's development and innovation in the field of AI and analytics?
Yeah, so this is one of the things to me that's interesting is like the thing that blew up generative AI was ChatGPT. Like obviously that was sort of the moment where it became a mainstream thing, and suddenly the entire world was talking about it and stuff like that. And obviously ChatGPT was a chatbot. You chat with it like you're texting a friend or whatever. And so I think a lot of people have started to equate generative AI with chatbots and like LLMs with chatbots. And that's kind of the natural way that we now tie those things together. And so a lot of folks, I think, when they think about how do we add generative AI capabilities to a product, a lot of it is centered around chatbots or experiences that are kind of chatty in that way. And I think there will be places where that works really well, but kind of to my earlier point about, products getting sort of generative AI features tacked on, the easy thing to do is add these kinds of chatbots because you can build them on top of APIs that are pretty straightforward to work with. But I don't think that's necessarily the right way of always using generative AI technology. Like one of the examples of this that I was talking to one of the designers on Node about was, if you're a designer, if you're like a web designer, you're trying to design a web page, a chatbot doesn't help you there. What you want is kind of a sketch tool where you can sketch something with like pen and paper and then have generative AI basically fill in the details for you, sort of do all of the tedious stuff that you typically have to do yourself, where you can kind of express your idea through drawing and then have generative AI do the rest of like the kind of tedious work that you typically have to do to make it pixel perfect. And so there's no chatbot there, but like generative AI is a key part of that experience. And so I think that's an example of a place where like using generative AI in ways that actually fit into the workflow of a user, fit into how they think, is really important, because that makes a much better experience than having a designer trying to like describe the web page that they want to design. That obviously would be a much clunkier thing than this sort of sketch tool. And so, for instance, an example is that inside of ThoughtSpot and Mode, we recently released a feeture inside of Mode called AI Assist. And within Mode, there's a code editor for you to be able to write SQL queries to run against your database. In this case, we don't want to help people like in a chatty way for that, because there are analysts who are writing code. Like chatbots don't really make sense there. We instead want to follow this model that this designer described, where like, can you sketch out the thing you want to be able to build? Can you write kind of pseudocode and not have to do some of the tedious stuff about making sure all the syntax is exactly right, but basically express the query that you want to Mode in sort of a shorthand where you can say, okay, join this table, do this thing. I don't remember exactly how to join it, but like figure that out. Basically try to outline the thing that you want to do and have it do all of the tedious stuff. And that's the sort of thing I think that can really accelerate those workflows for analysts. And it's not, chat with it and tell it how to write a query. It's kind of express the query in a way that's faster and more effective than having to type it all out yourself. And so I think all these sorts of ways are eventually how generative AI appears in analytics or appears in even sort of broader technology set is as places where it's not so obvious that you're chatting with a bot. Like it may not even be generative AI to a lot of users. It may just be this feature that just sort of works. And so I think over time, that's what we'll see is less focus on chatbots and things that are so clearly generative AI features and things that are just like experiences that suddenly seem to just work super well in a way that we're all comfortable with and kind of fit more naturally into the regular workflows that we're trying to improve.
And it does feel we're at a slightly odd time at the moment. There's so much economic uncertainty, and at the same time, everyone wants to go all in AI. And every tech project, though, is going to be placed under scrutiny for ROI, business value it might generate. So when it comes to investing in quality AI solutions, what does real investment mean in the context of AI development for ThoughtSpot? And how do you balance those technological advancements with that need for creating genuinely useful products?
I think a lot of this is recognizing that this is a long road, that there's a lot of stuff that happened really quickly. That one of the reasons I think these kind of tacked on chatbot types of features will make some products worse is you can build kind of a basic version of these things pretty quickly. You can build demoware pretty quickly. The one analogy I'd use for this is like self-driving cars. So self-driving cars were a thing that 10 years ago we had it felt like we were on the cusp. We had cars that could kind of drive on the highways and it was like, oh, these things are getting pretty close. And there were a bunch of companies and businesses that got started up around the expectation that there were going to be self-driving cars like in a year now. And I think what a lot of people realize is okay, you can actually do a lot of stuff pretty quickly with self-driving cars, but there's a bunch of these strange edge cases and very difficult problems. And in self-driving cars case can become very dangerous, obviously, if you don't get it right. And so all of the work is actually in that last little bit. And they're not a functional product until you can actually get that last little bit. So it's sort of an inverted 80-20 rule where 20% of the work can solve 80% of the problem, but you can't actually solve any of the problem until you solve all of it, because you can't have a self-driving car that can't handle when it tries to pass a school bus. And all the work is in figuring out those hard details that you have to get right to make this product functional. I think a lot of AI is along those same lines, where it's pretty straightforward to be able to say, I want to ask this chatbot a data question, and it's a simple data question on top of relatively simple data sets, and it will generate something that looks like a very good answer. But a lot of businesses don't want to do that. They want to ask much more complicated questions, or they're asking questions and they need to be right because it's a question that they're reporting to their board, or they're reporting, for earnings calls or whatever. And you have to make sure you're getting those complicated questions right too. And there's a ton of stuff that goes into making that actually work. And so I think in a lot of ways that the real investment in this is just recognizing that this isn't we're going to go build something and it's going to be great, and then we're going to move on to the next thing. It's like, if you want to build an AI powered product, you have to be in that for the long haul. And I don't know, similar to if you want to build a cloud-based product, that's not a decision that you can ship in 6 months and then move on to whatever's next. That's now your business. Your focus of your business will forever be making sure that you can run this thing in the cloud successfully. And so I think a lot of AI products are going to be the same, where, to be able to build something that's great on top of this technology, it's going to be a thing that you have to be committed to for the duration of however long that you're supporting that product, and continuing to push it and make it better and solve these weird edge cases and all this kind of stuff. So really, a lot of this is just the work. It's a commitment to believing that that's the right solution and continuing to push that technology forward, instead of thinking it's a feature to build and then you move on to the next thing.
And managing expectations in AI product offerings can also be difficult when we're right in the heart of this hype circle that we've mentioned a few times. So regarding the resolution to avoid overselling and under-delivering, how do you at ThoughtSpot ensure AI-powered analytics platform that you offer, how do you ensure that meets and exceeds customer expectations? Because it must be difficult doing just that right now with so much expectation and hype around it.
Yeah, and I think you just have to be honest about it. I think that's the important thing when you're talking to customers about this sort of stuff is there's people are getting sold so much hype.
Yeah.
That you have to be honest and say, hey, here are the limits of what this can do. Here are the places where it actually isn't going to work, where we don't recommend you use it in this way. And sort of have customers with you on that journey as you continue to get it better, and say, hey, these are what we can do today. This is what we think we're going to do tomorrow. But we want you to be a part of that process and to really work with you to make it good. ThoughtSpot has a number of customers that are exactly in this camp, that are kind of these innovation partners for us. The leading gaming company who recently came on board for doing exactly this. Some large financial services firms in the same way, and looking to ThoughtSpot as basically kind of partners in figuring out how they want to bring Gen AI into their businesses. That we obviously have a lot of expertise in that space. They understand their businesses very well. They understand the nuances, and like I said, the sort of the difficult driving, like traffic situations from the self-driving car analogy. Like they know exactly where those things are difficult to navigate. And so there's some recognition that, hey, we just got to work on this stuff together. But I think the main thing you have to avoid is it's easy to get caught up in the hype and to sort of promise like, hey, yeah, this technology is amazing. It can do all these great things. And there will be lots of people out there that say that. And you sort of have to recognize like, look, that's not one, not what's going to be true, but two, a lot of customers appreciate the honesty and the sort of being part of the journey to figure this stuff out together. And if you sell something that's going to sort of be this magic wand that solves all their problems, you're sort of headed for nothing but disappointment at some point.
And accessibility is another huge talking point right now. And I know at ThoughtSpot you aim to make analytics accessible to everyone within an organization. So what's the secret there? How does your platform enable users with completely varied technical backgrounds, some with very little, to engage with complex data effectively? Because it's quite a balance, isn't it?
And accessibility is obviously one of the sort of the key needs really in any kind of BI tool. Like to the point in a lot of ways is you're trying to solve these kind of self-serve problems. You're trying to help people who aren't necessarily accustomed to answering questions on their own get answers that they need, or people who have, like you said, varied degrees of technical capabilities. And those degrees of technical capabilities often matter because some people really want to be able to write code. It's important that if you're an engineer and you're trying to build a website, you probably don't want to use Squarespace. You want to be able to write code to build it because you have that capability and you can build a better website than you could with a drag and drop tool. And the same is true for data. If you're an analyst that knows how to write SQL or Python, your ceiling is kind of much higher than what you can get out of most drag and drop kind of BI tools. And so you actually want to have that capability. But the way that we see this is essentially trying to, one, provide a sort of range of different interfaces for people depending on where they are and kind of their technical ability or the kind of questions they want to ask. On one end, there's the kind of conversational experience that we've talked about where you can just ask questions in English and ThoughtSpot will help you figure out how to answer those. On the other end, you can write, Python and R and do sort of advanced data science and those sorts of tools or those sorts of solve those problems inside of Mode. And that's one of the reasons that Mode and ThoughtSpot came together, was to be able to provide that kind of full spectrum of technical experiences in a single place. The other part, though, I think that's important in this is to be able to move between those different pieces. So one of the things I think for accessibility, especially in AI or BI, that's tough is you ask a question in natural language, how many shirts did we sell in California or whatever, you get an answer. You want to be able to know that's right. Like one of the things that's really tricky is if it just says we sold 50 shirts, like how do you know to trust it? How can you verify it? How do you make sure that that's actually accurate? And so there's a lot of things that we've built around that as well, where you can see sort of stylized versions of the SQL queries that got written. You can see basically how how ThoughtSpot's AI took your English question, the kind of tokenized version of that question, where you can sort of read essentially similar to like reading Excel formulas. So you can kind of parse your way through the logic of it. If you want to see the actual underlying SQL to do that, you can kind of take a step further down. And so trying to give people different ways to reason about the questions at the level that they're comfortable in. And so a lot of that comes in these just ways to validate and making sure that you're not this black box, that you're just like throwing answers at people. And so I don't know, this is again kind of to the point of like working with AI is real work. All of these things are what make these products capable and functional and things like that. Like if you are a SQL chatbot where you ask a question and you just give an answer, even if you get the answer right most of the time and people have no way to verify it, they're not going to be terribly happy with that experience, because do I want to go report to my boss some number that I asked a bot of and I'm 90% sure it's right, but I don't know for sure and I don't have a way to validate it. And so it's a lot of those kinds of experiences that are really important in this, that it's not part of the core experience you'd see in the 30-second demo, but it's the part of experience that makes the product something that people can really trust and rely on in these really important business cases.
And when we talk about things like ROI, business value, and decision-making enhancement, Is there anything you can share around, or maybe some insights on how ThoughtSpot's AI-powered analytics contribute to improving decision-making processes in a business, and also the kind of real-world impacts that you've observed? Because I think this would be so helpful for people listening, thinking, how could all this work in my world? What would it deliver? Is there anything you can share on the kind of impact that you've seen?
Yeah, so I can share a couple of things from folks, customers that have approved some stories here. More generally, a lot of the ways that ThoughtSpot drives these impacts across most of our customers is providing this kind of accessibility to folks around the business to answer questions really quickly. One of the core kind of value props essentially of both Mode and ThoughtSpot in a lot of ways is delivering answers really quickly in this kind of time to value of like, you have a question, how quickly can you turn it around? How quickly can people get answers? Can you make better decisions with these really fast answers is really kind of the goal here. And so I think, again, broadly, when we make decisions just in our lives today, Google makes that really easy. It makes it really fast to get answers really quickly to things that may have taken forever or been impossible before. The kind of core philosophy behind ThoughtSpot in a lot of ways is that same ethos of like, how much better could we all be at the things we do if we could ask questions about what's going on in our business and get answers immediately. So there's things with this company called MD Audit, that's a premier healthcare organization, provider for healthcare organizations, integrated with ThoughtSpot Sage, which is ThoughtSpot. It's the kind of conversational tool to bring this kind of natural language, conversational BI to their employees. And so they've been able to do this and really minimize a lot of like billing risk because of the ways that people have been able to use it and get the questions that they need answered really quickly. The other big thing that Mode does is, Mode and ThoughtSpot do are embedded solutions where you can basically embed these BI solutions to customers and to partners. And so a company called Acton, which is a marketing automation tool, uses ThoughtSpot Everywhere, which is the embedded solution provided by ThoughtSpot, to be able to provide reports to their customers, to provide this kind of exploration tools for their end users. And gotten much higher adoption across those kind of analytics experiences for their customers. And so now people are spending basically twice as much time on their pages to do things what they need with their data to answer these questions and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things like that kind of experiences where people are now just like engaging with data a lot more, able to sort of be more generally aware of what's going on in businesses, not just for the sake of answering individual questions they need to answer, but just also this kind of ambient awareness that comes along with it when you can answer your questions that you have so quickly.
And looking ahead, if I was to ask you to look into my virtual crystal ball, any predictions for the evolution of AI in the analytics space? Anything you see that excites you, or how you see AI maybe shaping the way companies interact with data in the next few years? I realise it's an impossible question to ask at the moment with the speed of everything, but anything that excites you or that you've seen taking shape?
The one thing we haven't talked about here that I think we'll see over time is basically like unstructured data starting to take off a lot. So historically, sort of broadly, there's been two kinds of data. There's structured data and unstructured data. Structured data is basically tables of numbers. It's the kind of stuff you would open up in Excel and do math on and compute, a list of sales and compute the total sales by month or whatever. With unstructured data is basically everything else. It's images, it's documents, it's text, it's emails, it's all this kind of places where tons of information in that stuff, but it's really hard to get at. It's hard to access. Like if you were to give me a giant trove of emails and said, go figure out things that you can learn from this, it'd be very hard for me to do it because you have to basically read the emails and then kind of aggregate them up in your head and think about what they mean. Like it's hard to summarize this stuff because we have to read it all. One of the things that Gen AI does, and LLM specifically, is they basically become these kind of aggregate functions for text where you can feed it, 1,000 emails or 1,000 help docs and say, can you tell me what these things mean? Can you summarize them for me? Can I give you 1,000 support tickets from happy customers and 1,000 support tickets from unhappy customers and say, like, what are the differences between these two things? And it can give you 5 bullets to explain those differences. And so essentially, like, Gen AI has the potential to make unstructured data much more accessible and much easier to work with. And I think if that happens, one of the things that we'll see is a lot more sort of technology and tooling and focus on actually finding value in that unstructured data. Right now, it's like there's information in those support tickets or those emails or those documents, but because it's so inaccessible, we often kind of like treat that as a second-class data set compared to the structured data. Once it becomes more accessible and we sort of have the tools for mining it, if you will, I think there suddenly will be a lot more focus on trying to draw insights and information and decisions out of all of these giant structured or unstructured data sets in the same way that we spent a really long time trying to help us all make sense of structured data.
And speaking of making sense of everything, I think there's a pressure on everyone to be in a state of almost continuous learning now. So I've got to ask, as someone that's right in the heart of this space, and there'll be a lot of business leaders listening thinking, how do I keep up to speed with the pace of technological change? Where or how do you self-educate? Anything you can share around how you keep up to speed with everything?
So part of it is, find new sources you can just read. Like, I think that there's a handful of really good sources of news and things like that. The kind of common ones are things like Ben Thompson's blog is really good. There's a few finance ones out there. Honestly, just reading tech publications, things Wall Street Journal and sort of TechCrunch, RIP a little bit. Things like that are good for just following the news. But honestly, I think a lot of it is it's not. You have to sort of like saturate yourself in it some. That there's not going to be here is the 5 bullet summaries of everything. I think it's very difficult to actually learn anything from things that are these really sort of distilled aggregations. I think that this is one of the challenges of things like Gen AI is we don't actually learn that much if we just read these sort of like really succinct summaries. I think actually a lot of the best stuff comes from longer form. Like, I think it's more useful to read one longer form piece than it is to read 10 little short, here's the 5 takeaways that you should learn from the news kind of thing. Yeah. You're not going to necessarily learn as many facts from the longer form stuff. But it's the longer form stuff where you actually get much deeper, like conversations about things. You start to understand better ways to interpret what's going on. You start to read much more interesting things and can kind of see things with more clarity when you're actually in these kind of longer form pieces. So my general recommendation for folks on these things is spend less time trying to find the short snippet, like on the go aggregations that you can read in a tweet, and spend more time finding a handful of good in-depth analysis type of pieces. Because once you have that sort of a teach a man to fish versus give a man to fish, if you give a bunch of these little snippets, you're kind of constantly just being given fish. If you read these longer things, you're given fewer fish, but the way of thinking that's often presented in them, I think, is much more valuable and ultimately kind of teaches you how to fish in interpreting the news yourself.
Fantastic advice. Absolutely love that. And for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about ThoughtSpot, maybe they want to dig a little bit deeper on anything we talked about today, where would you like to point everyone listening to find out more information? That many different domain names now. Where would you like to point everyone?
Yeah. So ThoughtSpot, if you want to find more about a ThoughtSpot, it's just thoughtspot.com. And if you want to start a trial, you can start a free trial there at thoughtspot.com/L. Node, you can get Node through ThoughtSpot, or also Node.com has more details about Node specifically. And then on LinkedIn and Twitter/X, you can follow along for updates there, which is just at ThoughtSpot. So easy to find ThoughtSpot. No crazy domains or crazy handles. Just ThoughtSpot everywhere. Basically, is the easiest way to get there.
Awesome. I'll add all the links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. And so many big takeaways around how AI will, yes, transform thousands of products. Some for the better, some for the worse. But if you start with the real customer problems, think outside the box. Real results will require real investments, and also, of course, avoid overselling and under-delivering. So many golden points there, but just a big thank you for sharing that with me today. Thanks again, Ben.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Now, as we wrap up today's enlightening discussion with Benn Stancil from ThoughtSpot, I think it is clear that the journey towards an AI-enhanced product is fraught with both opportunities and equally pitfalls. Because Ben's insights reminded me that the true innovation starts with the real customer problem and requires a thoughtful approach into how integrating AI will add genuine value to that. And it's about thinking outside the box. Again, absolutely love that line, and making real investments and avoiding the all too common pitfall of overselling and under-delivering. It's something we see time and time again. But for anyone eager to dive deeper into the world of AI-powered analytics and learn more about ThoughtSpot's mission to create a more fact-driven world, I encourage you to check out their website at thoughtspot.com, and also the blog post that will accompany this episode at techblogwriter.co.uk. Go to podcasts. You'll find a blog post associated with this episode, which will include all the links that Ben mentioned and a few others too for you to check out. But over to you. Let me put the microphone in front of everyone listening. This isn't just a case of passively listening. What is your take on that AI paradox in product development? You've heard from me, you've heard from today's guest, but I'd love to hear your experiences. It's so critical in this discussion. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilCHughes. Let me know your thoughts on that. But that's it for today. So until next time, keep innovating, keep questioning, stay curious, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and I'll meet you here tomorrow. Same time, same place. Take care, gang.